Ladies and gentlemen, college football is back, and needless to say, it was a record-breaking and wild week one of college football. Now, we are going to go through each game inside of the top 25, as well as some honorable mentions for many performances outside of the top 25, but simply put, we're just going to jump right into it. So starting with number 1 Georgia, taking on number 14 Clemson. And I mean, simply put, it looks like Kirby Smart, Carson Beck, and the boys are back for another run at the title this year. Earlier in the day, it was announced that Trevor Etienne would be sitting out due to his arrest back in March, but I mean, either way, it really didn't matter for this game. Surprisingly, the Bulldogs did come out a little bit slower than people expected, not putting up any points until the second quarter, but I mean, the entire second half was just all Bulldogs. Nate Frazier did take most of the carries in replacement for Etienne, taking 11 carries for 83 yards and a touchdown, while Beck went 22 of 33 for 278 yards and 2 touchdowns. And I mean, overall, even though we got some glimpses of how good Carson Beck could look last year, this kid looked everything and more, and I fully expect him to be leading this team to the national title, or at least get very close to it inside the top 4. But as long as they can hold it down, I fully expect them to be the 1 seed going into the 12-team playoff this year. And like, I mean, this defense, they were just swarming and flying around on the field. I mean, they held Clemson to 188 total yards of offense. Like, that's just insane and unheard of from this defense. And I think that was the bigger headline coming from Clemson's side too, was just how bad Cade looked during this game. He didn't look great at all, going 18 of 29 for 142 yards and a touchdown. And I mean, yes, we can all put the blame on him because he is the quarterback, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really look like Clemson has many weapons on the offensive side of the ball. I mean, they did have a bright spot in Antonio Williams, who put up 76 yards on 6 catches against the Bulldogs defense. I mean, other than that, it was pretty bad for Dabo Swinney's squad. And it's really weird too, because when we talk about Dabo Swinney, we have to talk about how he didn't use the transfer portal throughout the offseason either. I mean, even in this article right here, Swinney did admit that he did have critics about how he didn't use the transfer portal, but I mean, he did admit that people are going to say whatever they want to say, and that he's just going to stick and do what he wants to do, what's best for Clemson year in and year out. And truthfully, for me, I just think that he has to adjust. Like, we're using the transfer portal now, dude. Like, we've seen what happens when you can fund a bunch of money and throw a bunch of money into that using NIL. And like, I think as times are changing, Dabo Swinney just really needs to kind of catch up with what we're doing now in the transfer portal, even though, yes, it's not what these old heads kind of want to have happen with it, but they need to just adjust to it, use their NIL money, and go get the players that their team needs. And if they can get some good players too, like Clemson should be able to get some good 4 or 5-star recruits from the transfer portal. But if this keeps up, they're going to have a fall off like none other. Now, the next game was between number 2 Ohio State and Akron. And I mean, everyone expected Ohio State to blow out Akron, but the talk of the town was about the 18-year-old freshman, Jeremiah Smith. Like, I mean, even in the pregame, this kid was doing some insane things without gloves even on. But I mean, even during the game, when this kid looked like he was covered, he was reeling in some insane catches. He ended the day with 92 yards and 2 touchdowns and became the first freshman to catch 2 touchdown passes in the season opener since 1996. Like, I mean, people are already comparing this kid to Andre Johnson, Calvin Johnson, and just even the big-bodied wide receivers that we want to see in the NFL one day. And I mean, truly, if this kid can keep it up and live up to that hype while he's at Ohio State, this kid is going to be something special. And like, I mean, on top of that too, not only do they have Smith catching passes too, but they also have Emeka Egbuka still catching passes for them too. And I mean, that's another first-round talent that they're going to push out this year. And I mean, if that continues, they are going to for sure be the wide receiver you. Emeka Egbuka did have 4 catches for 58 yards and a touchdown. I mean, he did look good as well. So I mean, definitely don't want to take anything away from him, but I fully expect that Ohio State should be solid again this year. I mean, if Will Howard can play well, I mean, he had 3 touchdowns. So I mean, that should help build his confidence going throughout the season. But I mean, all in all, now that the realignment with the Big Ten has happened, it's going to be a little bit more challenging for them to get out of the division, especially if USC, we're going to talk about in a second, does pan out and kind of starts to rise to the occasion. That's going to be a tough conference that Ohio State's going to have to win, and it's no longer just going to be about Michigan and those schools now. Now they have Oregon, USC, those kind of schools too. Now, the next game we're going to talk about is our first little scare of the day, and honestly, I don't know if you would call it that, because truthfully, it looked like Oregon kind of just fell asleep at the wheel in the second half a little bit. As we all know, all eyes were on the 6-year transfer Dillon Gabriel from Oklahoma, who ended up staying in college and transferring to Oregon due to not getting the draft grade he wanted or even being invited to the Senior Bowl. But like, I mean, he brings loads of experience to Eugene and is well within reach of a big-time record, as he's 4,353 passing yards away from tying the NCAA's all-time career record held by Case Keenum. So I mean, if he can do that this year, it's pretty cool, and I fully expect him to break the record too. I mean, Bo Nix inside of this offense threw for 4,508 yards in the same offense, so so it's definitely achievable this year. But as we jump into the game, first half he was doing amazing and the Ducks were up 14-0 going into half, but as I said, they almost fell asleep at the wheel, and although they never gave up the lead, at one point the score was 14-7 and even at one point 17-14, but once it got that close, the Ducks did finally slam the door shut and would take back control and win the game 24-14. I mean, it was an incredible interception to end the game and slam the door shut, but I think what we can also attribute this kind of closer game to was earlier in the first half, we saw Dillon Gabriel have a hand injury, so I don't really know if that was affecting his throwing motion or anything like that, but it's just something to keep an eye on as we go forward throughout the season. Another thing I think we can keep our eye on too is that this was just not a clean game by the offensive side of the ball or the offensive line. They had 8 penalties for 60 yards, so just a lot of just silly penalties that shouldn't be happening. But on the other side of the ball, on the defensive line, I mean, they were getting after it. They were flying around. They looked fantastic getting to the quarterback. And again, I think this defense is really going to come around this year. They're in the Big Ten, so they're going to have to get really stout with that run defense, you know, with the Iowas, the Penn States, and even the Michigans. But I think it's going to just take a little bit of time for Dillon Gabriel to get in the swing of things, especially with him having the pressure of coming in as the Heisman favorite. It's just a lot of hype he does have to deliver on, so it's going to be interesting to see how Oregon does pan out this year. Now, in these next 3 games, simply put, the Powerhouses in Texas, Bama, and Ole Miss all handled business and blew out their small school warm-up games to begin the year. And one thing I did want to mention from these games is that Jackson Dart, Jalen Milroe, and Quentin Ewers all looked extremely well, and I think it's going to be a much closer race for the Heisman than most people think, and I fully expect all of these guys to be in the race for it. Another cool thing that we saw in the Texas game, just because it kind of got out of hand, was we even got to see Arch Manning come into the game, and even though it was just his first game, he did even throw for a touchdown and rush for one inside of that game. Now, the premier game of this weekend where College Game Day did head to was number 7 Notre Dame versus number 20 Texas A&M. And I mean, this was a great game. One off thing I did want to mention about just College Game Day is just that they did actually bring back Lee Corso, who's 89 years old, back to game day, and he just looks so happy. I mean, this dude in my childhood, I would wake up every Saturday and watch him, and just seeing him put on the headgear and everything, it was awesome to see. And just everybody on the show was really happy that he was back as well. And even him, just all the things he's done for College Game Day, it's really good to see that he's back on the show. And actually, the craziest thing about him being back on the show too is that in his first week back, he went 9 for 9 with his picks, with the only person to pick Notre Dame to beat Texas A&M. I mean, it was awesome. Like, everything from this tweet right here happened on the show. I mean, they had Johnny Manziel, Pat McAfee, as always, was putting on a show, taking off his shirt. Lee Corso was dancing as a leprechaun, and Nick Saban, I mean, we'll see how long he lasts on the show, but it's going to be fun to see this show throughout the year. But as the game started, I mean, this was just an electric atmosphere. As we all know, Texas A&M's tradition of coming out to Power by Kanye West is just electric as always, and just can fire anybody up. But I mean, once this game started, it just truly looked like it was going to be a hard-nosed smash mouth game. Texas A&M does have a sophomore, Connor Wegman, only starting at quarterback. So, I mean, honestly, it did kind of show as we got later into this game, especially with his final stat line of being 12 for 30 for 2 interceptions and no touchdowns. We definitely kind of saw the sophomore atmosphere catching up with him and maybe just the lights being a little too bright for him in the moment. But with that being said too, I definitely don't want to take anything away from this defensive unit of Notre Dame. Like, I mean, this defensive unit that Notre Dame has is something special this year. The defensive line can get after it, but the secondary is just full of veterans that they know exactly what they're doing on every single snap. Like, this defensive secondary is one of the best, if not the best, in the nation this year. Again, this game was very close throughout the entire first half. I mean, they went into it at 6-6. I mean, first half unders, if you are betting those this year, those look really good, by the way. But again, in the second half, Connor Wegman's age kind of showed, and Notre Dame ran away with the game, finishing it 23-13. And as we look ahead at Notre Dame's schedule, I mean, honestly, it is very, very easy from here on. So I fully expect them to make the playoff without a doubt. The 12-team playoff, they will be in the playoff, but they should win out. So I can see them being like a 5 or a 6 seed just because of the strength of that schedule. But again, they are going to be in the playoff in December. Then we have number 8 Penn State easily handling West Virginia. The score looks closer than it was, but Penn State really controlled this one from beginning to end, and Drew Aller put on an absolute clinic, passing for 3 touchdowns. And the same thing for number 9 Michigan, handling Fresno State with ease. They did have a lot of question marks coming into this game, game, having to replace almost all the starters on offense, returning only one player from the championship team last year and a new head coach because Jim Harbaugh is now gone. And it did show early, but by the fourth quarter, they were able to put the game away. And honestly, I can see them regressing a little bit this year. And I'm going to say it, but they might possibly even miss the 12-team playoff at the end of the year. But then quite possibly, we have the biggest game of the weekend, and for all the wrong reasons, in Florida State versus Boston College. And I mean, first things first, we have to talk about how bad DJ Uiagalelei is. Like, and don't worry, I know that's not his last name, but we're just going to go with that for now because this dude is bad. Like, I mean, throughout the entire game, this kid just looked completely non-confident. He was missing so many throws. I mean, the one in the back of the end zone was terrible, as well as just how he doesn't look like he's making any good progressions or any good reads throughout the game. Like, I mean, it doesn't help too that he went 21 of 42 with 1 touchdown and 1 interception, which ended up converting into a touchdown. And I mean, he played so bad. Like, this kid played so bad that Boston College had 106 passing yards and still got 28 points put up in Tallahassee. Like, this just isn't a great look. I know that everybody was really pissed off that they didn't make the playoff last year, and then to come in and lose to Georgia Tech right out of the gate, and then to go on and lose again in week 2 in this type of fashion to Boston College, it just doesn't look good for Florida State. They've already been bounced out of the top 25, and I fully expect them to just go 5-7 this year. It's gonna be a very tough year if you are a Florida State fan, so again, apologies to that. I mean, this kid played so bad too that honestly, I could see their head coach getting fired before the end of the season. Like, he's playing so bad right now that honestly, they probably just need to sit him at this point. Like, I don't know what happened between the end of last season up until these 2 games, but he just does not look good and needs to be replaced as soon as possible.
Again, the play calling. Running back out here in the flat. You're getting a little natural pick route.
But let me know in the comment section, what do you guys think Florida State should do? I don't know what they're going to do, but let me know what you guys think. Then we move on to number 11, Missouri, and number 12, Utah, as they handled their games with ease, and not much needs to be said about those games. I mean, they both dominated and looked fantastic so far. But then we possibly get to it was personally for me, it was the game of the week. Like, this was the best game all weekend. I mean, when you have 2 teams that are just so evenly matched throughout the entire game, it's some of the best football to watch. We had number 23 USC taking on number 13 LSU in Las Vegas. And again, this was a statement game for USC. Like, everyone remembers the 2016 opener when USC went to play Alabama and completely got their asses handed to them, especially when they came out after doing that like crazy walkout, acting like dogs, and then they just completely got blown out by Alabama. So, but this game was completely different. Like, I mean, this game from start to finish was just a dogfight, and Miller Moss put together the game of his life so far, as he went 27 for 36 for 378 yards and a touchdown. Oh, and did I mention that inside of this game too, there were 2 insane catches that like completely changed the outcome of this game. The first one came in the second quarter and was incredible. Like, it almost gave me flashbacks of the Justin Jefferson catch last year against Buffalo. And then this second one late in the game on the game-winning drive actually was an insane catch, and just watching this live, my jaw hit the floor as this kid reeled it in with 1 can and then proceeded to also get targeted. I mean, that was just an insane catch. Overall though, I think both teams look fantastic. Like, we saw what Miller Moss could do last year in the Holiday Bowl, and it looks like he is the real deal, and it's going to carry over into this year, as well as how Brian Kelly can handle an SEC team, and he's going to at least have a good hold on LSU this year. And again, I fully expect both of these teams to be inside of the run for that 12-team playoff. Like, it's going to be very, very close. I mean, especially if Miller Moss can continue playing this insane and making these insane throws. I mean, it is going to be absolutely scary for the rest of college football. And truthfully, I fully expect Moss to continue playing at this level. I fully expect USC to continue climbing the ranks and maybe even sneak in the back door of the playoffs. Like, I can easily see them doing that. They are a sleeper team, especially inside of the Big Ten this year. From there though, the teams ranked between 14 and 18 had pretty easy cakewalks of their opponents, and not much needs to be said there. But then we get to number 19 Miami walking into the swamp in hostile territory and completely putting to sleep the Florida Gators. Like, I mean, the transfer Cam Ward put on an absolute clinic in this one, going 26 of 35 for 385 yards and 3 touchdowns and 1 interception. But like, I mean, throughout this game, this Hurricane team just had so much swagger. I mean, they looked like the old teams just walking around with so much swagger. Their defense was flying around and really making it hell for the Gators, even inside of their own stadium. I mean, honestly, seeing how Ward did play in this game, I fully expect him to be the front runner of the Heisman race so far. Again, it is only week 1. I can see Miller Moss being in the front as well. 1A, 1B right there. But again, we're going to talk about a wide receiver in a second that also is trying to make a name for himself as the best wide receiver and possibly the best player in college football this year. But from the rest of the games from 20 to 25 were all handled with ease. But I did want to mention two things that stood out to me and were actually records broken this weekend. The first being Tetairoa McMillan, who had an absolute day, catching 10 passes for 304 yards and 4 touchdowns. And again, I mean, like, this kid looks like he can be the real deal. I mean, he was routing kids up out there. He was just, I mean, like, his speed just looks so much faster than everybody out there. Again, it was against a smaller school, but again, I can totally see him carrying U of A to a very, very good record this year if they can just feed him the ball. But then the other thing I did want to talk about was the Boise State running back Ashton Gentry going for 267 yards on 20 carries and 6 touchdowns. I mean, like, that's just unheard of. That's not even been seen in the NFL, I think. I mean, probably there was, but I don't really know right now because I'm not going to look it up because I want to get this video out for you guys. But this kid does remind me a little bit of Alvin Kamara. My friend said it to me, and honestly, I can see that. Just how quick he is, how he has that kind of balance to him. He looks very, very similar to Alvin Kamara, maybe a little bit bigger, but this kid is going to be an NFL running back one day and definitely put his name on the map with that performance in week 1. But I want to know what you guys think. Who were your favorite performances or least favorite performances from week 1 of college football? If you guys did enjoy this video, let me know in the comment section below. I'm kind of just experimenting with this. I want to see if you guys like it, if you don't like it, if we can continue these videos to get a good amount of views. I will continue to push them out for you guys, but I just want to see what you guys are feeling for them. Again, if you guys did enjoy the content, make sure that you guys like, comment, and subscribe. Join my Discord server where we are talking all football. We are doing fantasy pick'em pools and everything in there, so make sure that you join there. And again, thank you to BetUS for sponsoring the videos. And as always, I will catch you guys in the next one.